Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. Our continued coverage of this past weekend's action on the undercard of Virgil Ortiz versus Sergey Bohachuk. IBF Flyweight champion Gabriela Fundora successfully defended the IBF title for the second time against Chile's own Gabriela Acenjo. You don't often see a lot of fighters from Chile in the sport of boxing. They don't produce that many boxers. She was a game challenger, a game opponent, though ultimately overmatched. In the opening stanza,
The opening round.
noticeably shorter, stumpier fighter in Gabriela Acenjo was doing a halfway decent job of countering the straight punches from Gabriela Fundora with looping shots over the top.
The looping right.
She's doing all right for a little bit in the opening round, but by the second round, you saw that Gabriela made a slight adjustment. She was getting off the jab and bringing the right hand over. She took her time a little more, measured a little more after touching Daniela with the jab.
Paused.
So she wouldn't be there for the looping right, be there to be countered. Just pausing for that half a second, that millisecond, not jumping right in behind the jab.
Measuring.
Mindful of the oncoming counter, she was able to stay out of the way, out of range, then bring the backhand over, which made a world of difference. This allowed her to safely bring over the backhand down the middle, or maybe an uppercut to the head, uppercut to the body. She started brutalizing Gabriela Acenjo, who I'm surprised was able to go the distance. She was tough. As for long spells of the fight, the majority of it, Daniela was overpowered, outgunned.
Gabby Fundora does a fantastic job of measuring and managing the distance, getting the most out of her statuesque frame. Those long levers, those long arms, long legs.
She doesn't just bear down on her opponents the way her older brother does. She still boxes them up before she punishes them.
It was a fan-friendly fight.
Like all of Gabriela Fundora's fights, Gabriela Fundora is an action fighter, reigning champion, one of two in this division. It all boils down to Gabby Fundora and Gabriela Alanis of Argentina. She's got all the other belts.
The one she won from Marlene in their rematch.
I suppose that now that Gabriela has made her second successful defense of the IBF title, the good people at Golden Boy will move to make the undisputed title fight between them, between Gabby Fundora and Gabriela Alanis, the two remaining champions at this weight. I don't think there's ever been an undisputed champion at flyweight since the major four sanctioning bodies, the WBA, the WBC, the WBO, and the IBF started recognizing women's bouts and sanctioning them. I don't actually think there's ever been an undisputed champion, one woman that held all the belts in this division. I think the winner would be this division's inaugural undisputed champion. Some sense of urgency to do it.
For Gabriela Alanis.
She's got 3 of the 4 major titles at this weight. That's 3 belts, 3 mandatories. One among them is Mexico's own Kenya Enriquez.
What about her?
Kenya Enriquez is a dangerous fight for anybody at this weight. For Gabriela Alanis, that's a dangerous fight that doesn't pay out a lot of money. So for having to take a risk on a Kenya Enriquez, you might as well unify titles with Gabby. You might lose to Gabby Fundora, but you might also lose to Kenya Enriquez. That's where the sense of urgency comes from.
Both dangerous fights, but one pays better than the other, and one would be on a major platform.
The Zone. Still plenty of time left in this calendar year to see the undisputed title fight realized at some point in the fall or maybe in the winter. It's the best fight to make, really, for the two champions. It's the only fight to make. It's the only one that makes sense.
Legacy-wise, money-wise?
I give the edge to Gabby, if and when that fight happens. I give the edge to Gabriela Fundora to go on to become this division's undisputed champion. Her physical gifts and physical dimensions in tandem with her fundamentals, her boxing.
The power.
She's a force to be reckoned with, and she's going to stay a force to be reckoned with for the foreseeable future. At flyweight, at super flyweight, when she ends up moving up there, bantam, super bantam.
That statuesque frame, if and when she fills out, there's a lot of possibilities for a fighter like Gabriela Fundora.
Congratulations to her for making another successful defense of the IBF title. Now, there's bigger fish to fry. In men's lightweight news, His Excellency Mr. Turki Alalshikh said via his social media, just met with my brother, Shakur Stevenson. I have given him the nickname Shakur Outlaw Stevenson. I'm waiting for someone to respond that I'm bad for boxing. Judging from that last part, that last sentence, that Turki is in any way, shape, or form bad for boxing tells me that he's aware of what some of the Canelo fans have been saying, what the Tim Tszyu fans have started to say, that some people don't like his presence in the sport.
I knew this was going to happen.
When he first reached out to Gervonta Davis, and Gervonta's fans immediately became defensive because underneath it all, they didn't want him to fight Devin Haney. They don't want him to fight Shakur Stevenson.
Turki Alalshikh's interest in the sport of boxing is to bridge the gap between teams, between fighters, to make the fights that weren't happening before. That's essentially what he wants to do.
Though because he wants to do it in a timely fashion, because he wants to do it quickly, that's the excuse some are using to take issue with him. That he's behaving like a spoiled brat, throwing his toys out of the pram. That's what I see some people saying.
I don't agree with those people, but that is what those people are saying.
So if you don't agree with those people and what they're saying, what is it to you? What is it really?
What do I think?
Yeah.
I don't think Turki realized when he first endeavored into the American market what's really going on in these people's minds and what really motivates them. Tribalism, nationalism,
Ethnocentrism, keeping up appearances, the idea.
certain ideas, certain agendas.
It's not the way it is with the Brits, you understand, because underneath it all, the fight fans across the pond, across the Atlantic Ocean, they want to see fights. Irrespective of what side of the aisle they're on, they want to see fights and they're willing to pay, which is why the UK is a more robust and healthy market for boxing right now than America.
Obviously, it didn't always used to be that way. There was a time when America was the mecca of boxing, when the biggest and best fights in the sport were happening right here. But a lot of time has passed and a lot of things have changed to where the UK is actually a healthier market for the sport because more fight fans are paying more money.
What I don't think Turki realized when he endeavored into America is the cultures and subcultures within the sport of boxing.
What does any of this have to do with people thinking that Turkey's bad for the sport?
That's a narrative, a new one that some are propping up because they're afraid that their favorite fighters that they feel represent them are going to be exposed.
What?
These people are protecting the fighters they like. That's what it is. If they're angry at Turki Alalshikh and that he wants to move quickly, he wants to make the best fights possible in a timely fashion, if you see that he's receiving pushback, that there are people that are starting to be against him, it's because they don't want those fights to happen. The reason they don't want those fights to happen is they are afraid their favorite fighters are going to get exposed.
It's the stupidest thing I ever heard.
Well, America is full of stupid people, in case you haven't noticed.
Morons.
If you're against Turki and what he's doing, what exactly is he doing that bothers you? What exactly is he doing that you are so against? What? That he's trying to make big fights, very big fights, involving the big names, the best fighters.
That bothers you?
Then what would you prefer? That he not try, that he not make these big cash injections to satisfy what it is the fighters want, try to. You would prefer that he go away.
Okay, if he goes away, then what?
Then there's no pressure on their favorite fighters to fight the best. It's morbidly stupid, I know, but if you're seeing that some people all of a sudden don't like Turki, it's because they're afraid he's going to remove all the obstacles, all the constraints that normally hold up fights. In essence, giving the fighters no excuse not to fight the best.
Ready. Next, we want Crawford.
We wanted to.
Yeah,
we want it. Of course.
Yeah,
We want it.
Well, I come for this deal.
That's right.
Yeah.
Nice. Beautiful. Nice.
Dr. Akan, Sila,
How are you guys? Hello. By the way, Turki, Virgil's dad.
Yeah, I know. He make a fight yesterday. He's your brother, not you, he's your son.
Yeah, I got it.
Today, please give us long time. The last fight, yes. The punch in the body, you finish it right away.
1, 2, hold on.
Oh, you got it?
He deserves it. You watch tonight, right?
The video you just saw was from before this past weekend's main event, before Virgil fought Sergey Bohachuk. And Turki made it clear what he wants to do, what he wants to pay for. He wants to pay for Ortiz versus Crawford.
We know Turki's got money.
So money is no excuse. He's got money for Crawford. He's got money for Virgil. That's what he wants to pay for. So that Virgil, after the fight is over, what does he say?
Oh, he wants the winner of Fundora versus Spence, which isn't even on schedule yet, by the way.
That fight hasn't even been made yet. So when Turki sees you in your dressing room before the fight, he tells you he wants to make the Crawford fight, and you get out there and you start talking about fighting somebody else next, somebody else afterwards. It makes it painfully obvious.
You two don't want the same things.
What it really does is expose the fighters and their teams, because you can't use a lack of money as an excuse anymore, or platforms, politics.
What politics?
Crawford's last fight was on the same platform that Virgil's fights are on, so there are no platform politics, no promotional politics. There's not a lack of money.
There's no excuses.
And that's why some of the fans here in America are turning against him, because he's removing all the excuses that their fighters would normally hide behind.
He's removing those excuses, those obstacles, quote unquote, and they don't like that.
Because they don't want their guys to get exposed. They want to be able to keep logging into Twitter or logging into YouTube, talking a bunch of shit, so long as the fight doesn't happen. Because if the fight does happen...
Well, you saw what happened to Errol Spence.
You saw what happened to Wilder when he finally did fight Joseph Parker. You saw what happened to him again when he fought Zile Chang. They don't want to see that happen to their guys.
That's why they're mad at Turki.
Because he's an aggressive businessman with an aggressive strategy that doesn't procrastinate. And what they're all about is procrastination.
He doesn't waste time. They do.
These are not serious people?
No.
These are not real boxing fans.
No.
A generous benefactor comes into the sport of boxing with big money he's willing to pay, in some instances overpay, to ensure that fights happen, and they happen in a timely fashion, and you're telling me that you have a problem with him.
Why?
You have a problem with this?
Why?
The only way I can reconcile it is that you don't like how this makes your guys look.
Like how Javante's fans didn't like how that made him look, like how Virgil Ortiz's fans now don't like the way it makes him look.
That's what it is, and that's why they don't like Turki. Because in a manner of speaking, he's exposing people.
Separating the men from the boys, the pretenders from the contenders.
I saw Rick Merrigan, who manages the career of Virgil Ortiz, post to his social media that all efforts will be made moving forward for Virgil Ortiz to fight Terence Crawford early next year. Ortiz wants it, and there's nothing but respect for boxing's #1 pound-for-pound fighter in Crawford, as he is a legend. Without question, it is one of the biggest fights in the sport to make. In the post, he tagged Turki Alalshikh, he tagged Eric Gomez, and he tagged Oscar De La Hoya. So moving forward, should we feel confident that this fight will happen? And myself, I'm really not optimistic, irrespective of what Rick Merrigan is saying now.
Why?
Well, did you see what Rick Merrigan said? That he wants the fight for quote-unquote early next year, when there's no reason that fight can't happen this one. There's no reason they shouldn't be able to do that fight around November or December. There's plenty of time left in this calendar year for both fighters to recuperate, having fought just a week apart from each other.
They're on the same schedule.
What Turki wants to do is make the Crawford versus Ortiz fight and put the Shakur Stevenson versus William Zepeda fight on that same show. That would feature two of Golden Boy Promotions' prized stallions, two of their stars, unbeaten William Zepeda and unbeaten Virgil Ortiz. Now ask yourself if you trust Oscar to roll the dice in the both of those fights with what are his assets, his unbeaten up-and-comers. Do you think he's going to do that?
I feel like one of those fights might happen, one, but not both, and not on the same show. Maybe we get Stevenson versus Zepeda?
And I think William Zepeda could give Shakur Stevenson a very hard fight, stylistically a very difficult fight, as he has the right style for the job.
Maybe we get that.
But I don't know that we get both. I don't know that we get the both of those fights on that same show before this calendar year is out, especially not when Rick Merrigan, who manages Virgil Ortiz, is saying they want to do that fight next year. They want to wait. What I think they're really doing...
They want to put some distance between Virgil and that fight, some time, enough of it that Crawford moves on to someone else because maybe he doesn't want to wait or Turki doesn't want to wait. That's what I think they're doing. That if you put the fight between Crawford and Virgil out there somewhere next year,
there's still a lot of time left in this one. Enough that maybe Crawford ends up fighting someone else. That's what I think Rick and Team Ortiz are banking on. That's what I think they're doing.
Crawford fighting someone else, making a fight with someone else. And then when said fight gets announced,
they can follow that news with news of their own. Virgil Ortiz versus some guy they get for him. That's what I think they're doing.
No Bohachuk rematch.
I'm not expecting that. What I don't think Turki realized when he endeavored into the American market to try and cater to the American fans is that the American fans, many of them, are protective of their fighters and protective of their image. They're like that.
So much so that there are fights that they would prefer those fighters not take.
You hear about it all the time, that the best need to fight the best, and that's what the fans want to see. Not some of them, no, not here in America. For some, it's all about keeping up appearances and maintaining an image, preserving a narrative.
I'm fairly confident that many of Virgil's fans would prefer to put distance between Virgil and that fight right now because Terrence is the older one of the two. Terrence is in his late 30s. They would likely prefer that a lot more time pass before Virgil fights him so that Virgil can gain more experience and so that Crawford can lose a step.
After this past weekend's fight, they can't be approaching a fight with the likes of a Terrence Crawford with all that much confidence because Virgil looked human and he got dropped 2 times. I understand that 2 weeks ago, Crawford looked human himself.
But Virgil looked even more human this past weekend, getting dropped 2 times and gassing out. Remember that before this past weekend, Virgil never went 12 rounds before. All of his fights ended by way of knockout.
If they do that fight next, if they do that fight now, I think Crawford stops him. I think Crawford knocks him out. That's a fight stylistically where Virgil's aggressive volume punching would work against him. Plenty of opportunity for Terrence to catch him in between, put him down, and put him out.
Virgil is big, and he's strong, and he throws good combinations, he's got good power, but you can't just try to mow down Terrence. If you do, he's going to create space and walk you into something hard. And the more you try to press him, the more that's going to happen.
Israel Madrimov knew that. He figured that out in the fight, that he's got to be careful jumping in because if he does, he might jump into a counter. So he measured his approach, which created a lot of quiet moments that costed him the fight.
With Virgil, he'd come right at him and he'd get himself knocked out.